things first. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright. It is a Friday morning here in New York City. Big plans this weekend. Things are happening. We made it to the end of the week. It's been a great week.
I'm glad you're feeling better. I had to turn my half P down. That voice is strong.
It's a little loud.
Professional.
Sorry, we'll bring it down a little bit. I'm in a great mood.
Preemptive Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. To
Yes.
Jenna Wolf.
Thank you.
To each
Danielle,
of our wives.
to Sue, of course.
To everyone out there, since we're not going to be on the air Sunday, Happy Mother's Day, everyone. My
That
wife,
is very nice.
this is the best Happy Mother's Day she'll be getting from me, because on Mother's Day I will probably be in Boston watching a basketball game, but such is life. I think she'll understand.
Was that you
Was
that you asking for permission, or was that you getting
This is
an
a
apology?
ask for forgiveness rather than
Okay.
permission situation.
It felt like that, Nick.
Yes. Chris Carter, you sign off on that, correct?
Yeah, Happy Mother's Day, JC. You should be saying Happy Mother's Day to your mom.
Okay,
because
Sheila,
actually Danielle
I love
is not your mom.
Happy
Good
Mother's
point.
Day. Say hi,
Mom, meet me in Boston. Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Good stuff right there. All right, speaking of Boston, if you weren't happy with the way the Eastern Conference Finals played out last year, fret not. We're doing it again this year. Same stage, same team, same superstar. Cavs have gone through 34 lineup changes with the only constant being LeBron James. Celtics have relied on 20-somethings with their stars Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward out, and their star being Al Horford. Here's Kevin Love on how we got there.
They have a lot of guys that can do a number of things, and guys that have really stepped up. And it's not just one player. It seems like, whether it's been a rookie, whether it's been, Rozier coming in and playing poor, Al Horford's playing out of his mind. It's been a lot of guys, and that's just three of the many. Jaylen Brown too. It's been a lot of guys that have played at a high level. So. In some ways it could be looked at as a surprise, but I just think both teams stepped up to their level of play, and, both teams have done that.
Okay, so all that is true. That being said, CC, should the Cavs be worried about the Celtics in Game 1 in Boston, where they play lights out?
Yeah, I would be concerned, especially in a series like this where the momentum is going to shift a couple times. The Cavs coming off a dominant performance against Toronto. They've dominated the East, and I think that the psyche that they have against Toronto is very similar to what they had against Boston. Now, I just want to see if that first game, which we were able to see in Toronto and Cleveland, how critical that game was. Toronto has a chance to win it in regulation, point-blank range, not able to get a bucket, a lot like Boston was able to stop Philadelphia and Joel Embiid from scoring late in game number 4. So that right there, I believe, turned the tide. I believe Cleveland still would have won that Toronto series. But that game going into overtime and LeBron and the Cavs ripping the heart out of the Raptors, that proceeded afterwards. So that game number 1, I believe, is very, very critical. It's critical not only for Cleveland that they show their dominance over this young team, but also for a young Boston team that knows that they play different on the road. They know it's important against LeBron not to lose home court advantage. You'd much rather lose it later in the series, maybe in Game 5, but you don't want to lose it in Game 1 or 2, especially in Game number 1.
Particularly Game 1. If they lose it in Game 2, it just feels different. It feels different than in the first game of the series, the Cavs take home court.
Yeah, I think they still have more confidence if it's 1-1 going to Cleveland that we could win one game
Why
there.
is that? Is it just a deflating blow?
It's a deflating blow. It is, and we're going to talk about the Rockets Warriors series in a moment. It's why Game 1 is so critical for Houston. Those 65 wins can go out the window in the first, 48 minutes.
Also, you're calculating in the dominance and the experience of the other teams being Golden State and Cleveland.
Right. Listen, when you talk about LeBron's dominance over Boston, that's a real thing now. We made a big deal out of the fact that LeBron's winning streak against the Raptors in the playoffs going into this series, he had won 6 straight. He had won 3 consecutive games in Toronto. It obviously turned into 5, that being playoff games. Well, LeBron James against the Celtics in Boston has won 6 in a row. LeBron James against the Celtics anywhere in the playoffs. That was in the playoffs as well. He's won 10 of 11. The Celtics' best player, you said Al Horford. Al Horford, this is remarkable. Al Horford has played 17 playoff games against LeBron James. He's 1-16. Al Horford is 1-16.
That's almost impossible.
It's almost impossible. It was 3 straight sweeps, and then last year when they took them to 5. Last year's Game 3 was the first time in 15 chances an Al Horford team has beaten a LeBron team. So there is that
question
type of
for
history.
you too. Al Horford, how many times was he a higher seed in the?
Absolutely. So they were the 1 seed in Atlanta and got swept. They were the 1 seed last year in Boston and lost in 5. The 2 previous sweeps, he was the lower seed. But the last 2 times, he's been on the 1 seed and gotten swept and then lost in 5. This time, obviously, he's on the 2 seed, but still higher than the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron's team. So that mental edge, I think, is real. What I think Boston has going for it is 2 things. And you and I disagree slightly on this. I think they have bodies to throw at LeBron. I think Marcus Morris. I think Jaylen Brown. I think oddly Semi Ojeleye is going to play a role because he's built like an NFL tight end. We saw Lance Stevenson be a pest. I think Marcus Smart is a rich man's Lance Stevenson. I think Marcus Smart is a better version of what Lance Stevenson tries to be. So you have people you can throw at LeBron, and the other edge they have, Jenna, is Brad Stevens can look at that Indiana series and say, well, go ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing. Do what they did against the Pacers and not the Raptors. Go ahead and follow that blueprint out and see how the Pacers took them to 7 games as opposed to what happened with Toronto.
And see, that's about not so much what the Pacers did against LeBron, but how the Pacers defended the others compared to how the Raptors defended the others. Brad Stevens now has an 11-game blueprint, what not to do, what to do to make sure Love and JR don't get off.
Right. I think the only thing that's hard to duplicate, it's hard to duplicate the lack of confidence that Cleveland had, or lack of confidence from the end of the season into that first series. The team that's playing against Boston, Kevin Love, JR, Cal Korver, they're all different. George Hill, they're all different players, either confidence-wise or because they've played some actual minutes together. So that's what I do believe. I do understand as far as the multiples they can throw them. So you mentioned 4 names that they can throw at LeBron. Even though LeBron has decisive advantage as far as height, speed, weight over all those guys, I just don't think any of those are adequate. I don't believe if you put Marcus Smart on LeBron, you're just wasting your time. And also, you're going to have to double team him. If you think they start double teaming Joel Embiid a lot in the last game, they go into this knowing that LeBron can dominate compared to, let's play it head up with Joel Embiid. So I think Brad Stevens will be more apt to double LeBron early. So the scheme would have to be just a little bit different.
Is there something to be said for the fact that this Boston team just feels like it doesn't care? Like they came out of this Sixers series knowing that the Sixers were long and tall and fast and had these superstars and had tons of momentum coming into the postseason, played their game kind of heads down, did their thing, not a ton of showboating, and sort of sailed through that series.
When you say don't care, you mean they're not intimidated?
The same way Toronto kept saying, you know what, in the end, LeBron was in our head. In the end, the record that LeBron and the Cavs had against us, that sort of creeped in. Well, LeBron has that record against the Celtics. Does it feel like the Celtics aren't as fazed by it as the Raptors were?
Well, this is what the Celtics have they can fall back on. Game number 1, first few minutes of the game, their all-star, they just acquired Gordon Hayward. He goes down. 2/3 of the season going to not going to be available for the playoffs. Kyrie Irving, he goes down. So they have a monumental win over Philadelphia, who people were predicting would represent the East in the finals if LeBron and the Cavs didn't make it. So they have that to fall back on. All right? Toronto, what excuse did they, what did they have?
And Toronto's 2 stars, while Toronto had a new bench this year, Lowry and DeRozan had seen all the ghosts of LeBron. Jason Tatum was in college last year.
Yes.
Jaylen Brown was just a supporting actor at best last year. Now, Al Horford's got to deal with it, but those other 2 guys don't so much. Where I think Cleveland, though, has the decisive edge, and they are the only team, one of the only team in the East I'd be saying this about, is Boston. We saw it game 1 against Milwaukee, games 3 and 5 against Philly. They have this unrelenting belief. If it is close late, that is our basketball game. They have won, I believe, 16 games this year where at some point they trailed by 15 points. They are the best closing team in the league. That is due to the execution of the players and the schemes of the coach. Well, they're going up against a guy who right now appears to be playing at a level as the greatest closers in NBA history. Like, no one right now has more confidence late in a game than that guy, Dan LeBron James. So where one place that Boston has had an edge on Giannis in Milwaukee, Embiid and Simmons in Philly, they are not going to have the edge against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't believe so. I think this is... Personally, I think it's odd. I think all these games are close, but I also think it's a short series. Like, I don't think the Cavs are positioned to blow the Celtics out a bunch, but I don't think the Celtics are positioned to win a bunch of games in this series.
Yeah, I believe the home court advantage plays a part in it. Boston's players play better at home, and they win a couple games.
They haven't lost at home all playoffs.
Happy Mother's Day, Danielle. Nick's going to be at the game this weekend. There, we just dropped it on you. I'll hang out with you. Coming up, let's talk about what's going on out west. Is Game 1 already a must-win for the Rockets over the Warriors? Next,
already.
First.
Must win Game 1.
Yes.
That's what the reports are saying, Stacey.
I was told I was never pretty or beautiful when I was young. When I go to the